All right, we are live. Got to let it breathe just for a moment here. Bring on Facebook, and then we can begin our reveling in earnest. So excited, so excited, so exciting. And we are good. Welcome in, everybody. This is the Mile High Huddle podcast, the gut reaction to your Denver Broncos beating the Cleveland Browns 29-12 in what I've learned, Zach. It was the first 29-12 game in NFL history. Could that be right? Either way, the Broncos, this was a rock fight for most of the game. The turning point, obviously, DTR getting knocked out by out of the game, I should say, by Baron Browning on a ticky-tack call, but it was penalized, by the way. PJ Walker comes in, the floodgates open. What was your gut reaction to the Broncos now ripping off their fifth straight win? Are you ready to fully embrace the belief in this team?
Number one, I want to talk about how poorly officiated this game was, Chad. I mean, every time you look up, it was a penalty flag. The hit on Baron Browning. I know some in Broncos country, even Scott, disagreed with us on the Kareem Jackson suspension and hits, but that was a shoulder-to-shoulder hit that Baron Browning laid. I don't know what else he's supposed to do. It seems like the NFL is flagging and targeting the Broncos off of the back of Kareem Jackson's reputation. I was disgusted by what I saw from the Zebras today, but let's put that aside. Let's talk about the Broncos now. 5 straight games. They're above 500, 6-5. And I'll say it again. I'm sorry, VJ, because that defense, Chad, it might not be always pretty. It's not the sexiest game you'll ever see for all 4 quarters. But once again, like I've said the last month, they just find a way to get it done. And I understand it was a rookie quarterback. I understand it was a hamstrung Cleveland offense, but the Broncos, again, made the plays that they're supposed to make when they're supposed to make them. I am fully now embracing what the Broncos are doing because 4 more wins, Chad, can get them to a wild card. They can finish 10-7. And when you look over the Broncos schedule, I'm not terrified at all. Okay, 3 straight road trips at Houston, at Los Angeles, at Detroit. But then you come home for the Patriots, you stay home for the Chargers, and you close out against the Raiders. I don't see any reason why at this point they can't go 10-7. I don't see any reason why, considering how they're playing, they can't sneak into the postseason as a wild card. What a year.
Indeed. I'll tell you this too. One thing that gave me some misgivings was, going into this game, I still picked the Broncos, but uncannily, all the strengths of the Browns matched up with what have been weaknesses for the Broncos, and yet they overcame it, the Broncos, today, and we're going to talk about how. But first, we got to tip our cap to the man, Chris Hernandez, with a very, very generous super chat, starting things off for us tonight. Always a symbolic number on his super chats. Broncos 29, Browns 12. Love it, dude. Appreciate you, Chris. He says 5-game win streak, 15 takeaways in 4 games, a winning record. Slow clap indeed. I'm right there with you, Zach. Phenomenal. This was something that everyone's been wondering about. Is this takeaway streak sustainable? For the vast majority of this game, it looked like, no, this is kind of where reality starts biting, so to speak. But that flood of turnovers in the fourth quarter, I mean, the Broncos ended this one with 3 takeaways to Cleveland's 1, results in a win. Flazify says, what a turnaround for Vance, Desmond, Joseph. Broncos got to stay hungry and wanting more to have at least the next two or three to win. Have to win at least the next 2 or 3 in this upcoming road stretch. Yeah, this is going to be a tough road stretch. We'll get there. For now, Zach, we're reveling in this victory, and much love and respect to Chris and Flazify.
Absolutely. Thank you, Chris. Thank you, Flazify. The defense, again, I've apologized to VJ. I thought the other shoe would drop at some point, but the other shoe hasn't dropped. This is a very active, very chaotic unit that thrives off taking the ball away. And I will say it must have been nice for the Broncos defense to play at an advantage, to play with a lead and get to pin their ears back against a rookie quarterback. There are some warts in the Broncos D. The running defense still is a little leaky. They still miss way more tackles than I would want them to, but to VJ's credit, he's gotten players to step up. PJ Locke had a nice game today. Nick Benito had a nice game today. Zach Allen had a nice game today. That's what good coaching does. And I saw it from Leadhead in the comment. I want to say it once more. Both sides of the ball. We'll get to Sean Payton in a minute. Coaching, coaching, coaching.
Indeed. On that subject, though, of the run, Alexander jumping in with a generous super. Thank you, buddy. He said, two of them incomplete. Thanks so much, MHH, for keeping the light on. Let's rodeo some Texas barbecue. Zach, I hear you. Brady is right. Indeed. I want to talk about this real quick. You mentioned the run game. Still at times a little too leaky, allowing basically an average, Zach, of 4.5 yards per rush today. But were it not for some handy-dandy scrambling by the quarterback, the Broncos held this prolific Browns running back duo, I should say, to under 100 yards. Now, as a team, the Broncos ended up giving up 107 yards on the ground because Dorian Thompson-Robinson had 21 yards himself. But, Zach, not only did the Broncos do a solid job of bottling up what is their this is what Cleveland's had to hang its hat on since the Deshaun Watson injury is the running game. Not only did they bottle that up, but they did the Broncos, for 169 yards. Not quite as efficient in terms of their yards per attempt. Cleveland, again, 4.5 yards today. The Broncos, Zach, 4.3 yards per rush. These are the kind of metrics that win ball games, though, like especially going against an opponent like Cleveland who stops the run and can run all over you. To put the brakes on both aspects, that's a big reason why the Broncos won today.
Absolutely. You have to control the trenches on both sides, and the Broncos have done that masterfully over their 5-game winning streak. It's just the context, I guess, Chad, of the rushing defense and the yards they give up. The total numbers look pretty good, but it seems like when the defense has a good series or the offense scores, the defense can get a little complacent and start arm tackling or take a couple plays off. That has to change. I thought the Broncos rushing offense was amazing, and that's what's led Russell Wilson to another turnover-free game, interception-free game, I shall say. 21 straight quarters now without an INT for Russell Wilson. He has 10 total touchdowns in that span. Wasn't crazy, Chad, about a couple Broncos running plays, the play calls on Sean Payton's part, but Samaje Perine, hammer. Javonte Williams, hammer. The offensive line, maulers. It's so fun to see.
North of the 49th parallel, we have a longtime OG Super Chat superstar, Tom El Greco, jumping in. Thank you, bud. He says, still not sold on Russell Wilson, but I'm getting close. Big believer in Sean Payton, and we've become the poster boys for bad hits, which are pretty clean. Keep up the good work, boys. Canada loves you guys. We love our Canadian brethren and sisters as well. Now, listen, Zach, to his point about Russell Wilson, being sold on this. And has he proven to be worth what the Broncos gave up for him? There's an argument there that says he hasn't yet. But as to, Zach, the question of whether or not under the guidance of Sean Payton, Russell Wilson has bounced back pretty close to vintage form, I think that has been thunderously, resoundingly answered. Like, to me, it's a non-question now. And they just got to keep it rolling.
I feel like you can argue it's so subjective what overpaid is or not worth the money. I feel like the Broncos paid Russell Wilson in the end to win football games. And right now, the Broncos with Russell Wilson and because of Russell Wilson, not in spite of Russell Wilson, are winning football games. The plays that he's making, Chad, the throw off his back foot to Cortland Sutton in the first half, the touchdown to Troutman where he was playing, again, backyard football and buying time and finding the open receiver. Those are the plays that the Broncos paid Russell Wilson to make. And under a competent coaching staff, Russell Wilson is starting to make those plays. So I think it's well in line with what he's making and what he's delivering this season.
Ted, my dog, what's up? Thank you, buddy. He says, loving this scorigami win. We've already won more games than all of last year. They'll double it if they keep playing like this. MHH for life. Pizza. Yes, indeed. We love Little Caesars around here, as you guys know. Thank you, Ted. Appreciate you, big dog. And yeah, they've got themselves, do the Broncos, a nice model, and it works. And they have the horses to make it work. Robert Jumping in. Good to see you, Robert. He says Sutton is a complete stud. Wow. Remember when we were talking about trading him? And Russ is cooking. Is that okay to say now? Love from Nevada. Look, he might not be cooking, Zach, some of the bombastic statistics that fantasy owners go gaga over. But once again, against a very, very good defense, who's both against the pass and the run, very stingy. It was his least efficient game of this stretch, Zach, but he still went 13 of 22, 134 yards, a passing touchdown, great catch by Troutman for what it's worth. Finally made us a play in the passing game, and a QB rating for Russ of 91.9. And then he also finished with 34 rush yards. So he was basically 100 and just under 180 yards from scrimmage that he helped on a night, or on a day, I should say, Zach, where the Broncos produced a total of 294 net yards.
I mean, it might not be a 5-star Michelin meal that Russ is cooking, but it's palatable steak and potatoes. And when you're hungry, Chad, steak and potatoes taste amazing. And that's all we could have asked for this time last year, was the Broncos to just be competent and do enough on the offensive side to supplement the defense and win games. We had a comment, though, about pizza, keeping on the food topic. I thought Russell Wilson, that was one of the checks that he had today, the audibles, a lot of different verbiage and weird, Omahas that he used. I thought he did a really nice job at the line, Chad. He had way more command today than in previous weeks of really taking ownership of the offense, and his audibles and his calls directly led to positive Broncos gains. So I think he's becoming more comfortable in Sean Payton's offense as the year goes on, and we're seeing that come out in the results.
The thing we have to remember is it takes time to assimilate a new coaching philosophy, a new system, and all that. And they had some warts, they had some kinks, Zach, in the first quarter of this season. But I think it's pretty clear that he and Sean Payton have ironed them out. And I love how Sean Payton started rolling out some things relative to Russ, the playmaker, today, that really caught Cleveland by surprise, that no other opponent had seen so far. Bringing up shades of I always forget this dude's name. The Russian. Thank you, Taysom Hill. Why do I always struggle with his name? Mike Edel jumping in. Very generous super chat, Mike. Thank you, big dog. Good evening, gentlemen, he says, and all the great MHH fans. All I want to say is go Broncos. Also, that roughing the passer call was doo-doo. Love the show. Shout out to VJ and our O-line. Go Broncos, hashtag new culture. Yes, indeed, but it's funny how serendipity kind of works out. The Baron Browning flagged for that. But even though I think most of us agree that it was a hard hit, don't get me wrong, but it was clean. It wasn't ill-intended, but it knocked DTR out of the game, and that was the floodgates. PJ Walker it wasn't his fault, that first turnover, but still, he just wasn't up to the level of the speed of this particular game. And I think, Zach, the physical intensity of it, and it was a rout from there, basically.
I think the roughing call was an insult to doo-doo, Chad, because it was completely egregious and unnecessary. The Broncos, again, are being penalized for Kareem Jackson's infractions, I feel. And maybe it goes back to Sean Payton's bounty gate history. Maybe the NFL and the referees are not completely over that. I do not know. But at this stage, the Broncos are being penalized for playing football. And if you saw what Simmons was talking about during a commercial break, he went over to a Browns player and basically said, "What do you want Baron Browning to do?" And the Browns player said something, and Simmons just rolled his eyes. I mean, it's becoming impossible, literally, not hyperbolically, literally, to play defense in the NFL. And the Broncos continue to be punished for it. Fortunately, though, it didn't affect the outcome of today's game.
I also think that PJ Locke penalty that gave him the touchdown, Browns basically, that set him up for their one touchdown today. I think that was ticky-tack as well.
Very.
And another thing, as far as PJ Locke is concerned, look, I got to hope and pray that Caden Stearns eventually manages to stave off the injury bug for good. But this defense is just better when PJ Locke is playing next to Justin Simmons. And I think he's a possible long-term guy next to the All-Pro. Taylor, brother, appreciate you. He says, we took apart that so-called Browns defense. It's 5 in a row. On to Houston. who I believe we can go into and win. I question the refs today, though. Go Denver Broncos, MHH for life. We got Zeus McPeak in the house. The first face etched on the MHH Mount Rushmore right here. Thank you, Stu. So good to see you tonight, big dog. Love you. He says, hi, all. Go Broncos. The refs were awful. Yes, they were. Yes, they were. But, hey, the Broncos overcame it. That's what matters most. The Ronk checking in. Love it, dude. So good to see you, Mike.
Thank you, Mike. Good to see you as always. We got Riptide, $2 super hopping in. Good to see you as always, Riptide. I am a believer in no more losses. I don't know, Chad, if that's very feasible for the Broncos to go undefeated, but at this rate, I mean, who's next? It's the old Goldberg meme that we've been kind of parroting on this show the last couple weeks. And at this stage, after beating literally every single one of the hottest or best or most complete teams, they have to feel like on cloud nine. Who can really beat them? Houston, tough but beatable. Detroit, tough but beatable. Chargers, the Broncos. If there's one team in the West the Broncos have beaten in the last 5 years, it's been the Chargers, the Raiders at the end of the year. So I'm with you. I'm a believer in winning now, not losing.
Patriot Text jumping in. What's up, big dog? Thank you. He says, winner, winner, chicken dinner. Who would have thought 6-5 after Miami? If Buffalo loses, we play Houston for a wild card position and the tiebreaker, MHH for life. I don't know, man. I kind of think that today was a tough game. Came down to the wire as far as the Jags Texans, but that could be the kind of floodgates that exposes. Hey, good job by D'Amico Ryans, but you still are a few horses short. I think they've kind of outkicked their coverage a little bit this year. Doesn't mean I'm sleeping on the Texans. That quarterback and the speed that team has at wide receiver are phenomenal. And just that swagger they're playing with under D'Amico Ryans makes them a legitimate foe. But still, I think the Broncos, Zach, at this stage have proven they can play with anyone. They can beat anybody.
Yep.
And it's this model, dude. And one thing also that the Broncos really have going for them, and I'm going to continue to knock on wood as I say this, they are staying healthy. These are physical rock fights. Many of these games, when you go in and decimate teams that are plus 500 by 3, 4, 5 games, in some cases, they're going to be a rock fight. The Broncos are persevering, and Zach, they're staying healthy. Papa Bear, love you, big dog. He's saying 11-6.
Yeah, I'm with you about Houston. I mean, certainly playing very well under D'Amico Ryans. I actually watched their game today, and so much energy in that crowd. They have the fans at full throw. Everyone's really buying in, the whole team. CJ Stroud's unbelievable, but he's still a rookie quarterback, and if you've watched his tape, he's still prone to rookie mistakes. And that's the model you're talking about, Chad. Take the ball away and don't give the ball away. I don't care if you're facing Houston, Brady in his prime, Mahomes in his prime. If you play football like that, you're going to win way more games than you're going to lose.
Well said. Here is a top rope super chat from the Duchess going off. Love it. So generous. Thank you, Michaela. She says, the coming remainder of the game scares me. Only 2 games left at home, at Houston, at Detroit, at Chargers, then back at home against the Pats and Chargers, finishing the season in Las Vegas. Any prediction? Well, I mean, I think that at this stage, Zach, I have a hard time picking against the Broncos. Right. But just for the sake of balance, I think I looked at this schedule. I think that Houston game and the Lions game are really the 2 biggest threats remaining on this schedule. So even if they lose them both but win everything else, right, you're talking about a 9-7 finish, right? Did I get that right? Yeah, 9-7 finish. So 9-8, 9-8, 10-7, 10-7. Thank you. I don't math well. You guys know this by now. But still, that's probably good enough for a playoff berth. But this Houston game will be really important because, once again, Zach, conference implications.
Exactly. I keep saying it every week. You know, the Broncos are bound to come crashing back down to earth, and I'm waiting for the other shoe. But I mean, who says they have to lose? If they want to make the wild card, they have to win 10 games realistically. Well, they're 6-5 now. You can go 4-2 over your last 6 and probably sneak into the playoffs. And again, if you look over the schedule, you mentioned threats. I feel like the Raiders at home in the finale, they're going to want to play spoiler under Antonio Pierce. They're going to want to wreck the Broncos season. That might be a challenge, but the Broncos are due to beat the Raiders at some point eventually. Maybe that's the year this streak is snapped as well. So yeah, 4-2 over the last 6 to get you in. I do think, Michaela, maybe I'm just feeling good right now. I think the Broncos get to 10-7. I think the Broncos make the wild card. How crazy is that?
Well, I mean, let's look at the Chargers. Where are the Chargers at? They're about to play tonight, but they're 4-6 and they're going against a tough Ravens team. So it's in LA though. I still see that as a likely Baltimore victory, 4-7. The Raiders now are 5-7 after losing to the Chiefs today, who are 8-3. Crazy, Zach. This deep into the season, only 2 games separate the Broncos and Chiefs, and a lot can still happen. Naj, my dog, from the top rope. Love you. He says, hey, brothers, fantastic team effort. Survived the phantom PI and holding on Sutton. We are getting spectacular catches every week. A huge game next week. Go Broncos. Yeah, for what it's worth today, Zach, I'll just rattle this off real quick. Cortland Sutton was targeted 6 times. He caught 3 balls for 61 yards. Plus, on that initial possession, was it the initial possession? He had that big PI that he drew. So, yeah, I mean, we talk about Russ returning to vintage form. I think it's also pretty much a given that Sutton has returned to his vintage form of at least 2019.
God, you mentioned the Broncos are 2 games back, and all I can keep thinking about is weeks 1 and 2. The first couple games of the year, man, that Vegas game, the Commanders game. If you don't blow those, I mean, you're in really, really good position to maybe take the division, as crazy as that sounds. But, we'll see what happens from here. But Cortland Sutton, he's playing at an all-pro, Pro Bowl level, making spectacular highlight reel catches every single week. And he went back to that type of ability where even if you throw him the ball, he doesn't catch it, he'll draw a PI. It'll be a positive play in Denver's favor. So Cortland's balling out. No coincidence that Russell Wilson's looking rejuvenated. Coaching is that bump, Chad, that we've been waiting on for years, and we've seen it do this, and now we're seeing it do this.
No doubt about it. That is a for sure thing. I also love today, Zach, that the Broncos made a concerted effort to get Marvin Mims some offensive touches.
Yes.
3 targets, only 2 receptions for 24 yards, and then that 1 rush for 11. But every time he's got the ball, that twitch just jumps off the screen, and I think they're onto something. Going for 80-yard scoring drives to open this game back-to-back, I mean, that's Sean Payton for you, dude. That is what Sean Payton that's the most evident, obvious sign of being coached by one of the best offensive minds of this era, especially against a defense like this. Michael Davis, brother, aloha. So good to see you. He says, we bullied the 7-4 bullies of the NFL, Cleveland Browns, time of possession, run game, turnovers, identity. We're the only team currently winning like this in the NFL. Yeah, we're just the Broncos are just a physical, resourceful, scrappy opponent. No one wants to draw the Broncos right now just because they just find a way. They find a way, make a way. And this one, Zach, was looking like it was going to come down to the wire. And I still would have trusted the Broncos to come out on top in such a situation before the floodgates got open. Brandon on Facebook, thank you, buddy. He says, hey, great win today. I thought we could get to Cleveland's defense. Can we touch base on how bad the refs are this year league wide? Zach, you want to touch on that?
I mean, I feel like I have already, but it's gone downhill every year. I happen to think this year is the worst that I've seen in my 30 years of watching football. It should be a full-time job, NFL officiating. They have these part-time, lawyers and whoever else coming in during the season to officiate games. And I don't know if it's the script. I don't know if things are rigged or whatever, but the officiating has gotten capital B bad.
Wade Kimball jumping in with a super. Thank you, buddy. He says VJ has become a wizard. Gandalf Phillips. Yeah, I mean, he is kind of a chip off the Phillips block, right? That's he does spring off the Wade Phillips coaching tree, and this dude is I mean, assistant coach of the year, the redemption story of it just alone, Zach, after the historic start, wouldn't shock me if the Broncos continue to keep up this momentum and make the playoffs. And I think also at this rate, Sean Payton I mean, who would be a better candidate, again, provided things continue, to be coach of the year than Sean Payton after the way things started and the preceding 7 years of missing the playoffs and all that? Like, it's a no-brainer.
Well, I was going to say Dan Campbell, but then he laid an egg on Thanksgiving. So, yeah, I mean, if the Broncos sneak into the playoffs, if they win double-digit games, considering how they started 1-5, they make the postseason, I don't know how you bet against Sean Payton for Coach of the Year. The fact that he's even in the conversation, Chad, is amazing. I mean, we've been killing ourselves for 7 years since Gary Kubiak for the Broncos to have an adult, a competent, a halfway decent head coach. And now we have one that may be, in the end, NFL Coach of the Year in his first season in Denver. What a time to be a Broncos fan.
It's also ironic, Zach, that if Sean Payton manages to take home that particular award, he also did after his first year as head coach in New Orleans. So some parallels there, interestingly enough.
Nice.
But he's definitely turning some heads. I think it's fair to say at this stage, Zach, the Broncos have the NFL's full attention. FA, and yet the NFL still can't knock them off. So FA, brother, appreciate you.
Thank you, FA.
So generous. He says, "Go Broncos! I love this team. I love you guys. We love you too, big dog. These are exciting times. Maybe VJ is a good DC after all. Broncos will be a thorn in the rest of the league." Yeah, I think so. I mean, I started feeling like a crazy person to open this season with how bad the defense was. I mean, Zach, it's one thing to, be bad against the run or give up, too many points or whatever, but historically bad. I was feeling like a crazy person because I wasn't totally against VJ being hired. Now, I wanted somebody else, as you guys know. I was on the hire Rex Ryan bandwagon, but when the Broncos made that decision, I questioned whether it was good both for VJ and the Broncos, because VJ coming back to all the storylines of his failed head coaching regime and the pressure and scrutiny that creates. And then also, Broncos couldn't move the needle with him at the helm. What makes them think that it would be any different as a coordinator? But as a coordinator, I looked at some of the things he did in Arizona. I remembered back to when, Zach, he was head coach of the Denver Broncos and Joe Woods would kind of wander off the map, so to speak, and he'd take over play calling duties at halftime, come back, the defense would be much better, etc. And I was at least mildly optimistic, only to have that completely dashed within the first quarter of the season. So it's really good for him. It's really good to see that. I mean, it's just a nice little redemption story. Redemption, Zach, for VJ, redemption for Russ. You could even say redemption for Sean Payton, because he's been questioned highly for just deciding to leave New Orleans after all those years, take a year off, and then come back to Denver. You're going to go to Denver where they haven't won anything since 2015. So redemption all around.
I'm happy for VJ. Despite how I feel about him professionally, he seems like a good guy who I'd want to, grab a beer with and talk football. So I'm happy he's getting his redemption. And the credit to him is well deserved. I mean, he's doing this with the Broncos defense that's down, if you remember, 2 starters. They lost Caden Stearns and they lost K'Wan Williams, 2 really good secondary players. Imagine how good they would be with those guys. But not to take anything away, one thing that's made the defense so effective since week 3 is the offense playing complementary football, the team playing complementary in general, not turning the ball over, keeping the defense rested on the sideline, putting touchdowns on the board. That has been monumentally intangible for the defense to take hold with. And that's what I feel like is a footnote in the resurgence of Vance Joseph.
Indeed. Riptide, loving what Russ is doing, whether he's running, whether he's scrambling, he's just loving it. He says, Russ, pardon me, is pushing for comeback player of the year. I say so. I mean, there are some people, Zach, who say, no, that's meant for, an injured player from last year, not someone who is down on his luck, but he's really the story at quarterback this year, not because he's blowing down the doors statistically like, Peyton Manning circa 2013, but because he's finding a way amid a very poor start to win a lot of games, be at the helm of a team, Zach, that is now the hottest team in the NFL by a wide margin. and he keeps coming up clutch in critical moments, including today. I mean, that touchdown throw to Troutman, Zach, in the clutch where that's how you really put him away. I mean, a field goal probably still would have been the difference there and they'd have been fine, but Russ still finding and saving his best play for when it matters most. Ken in HB. I hate surfing in HB. Hate surfing in HB. DI. Browns are a Pop Warner team, and with the exception of the Lions, so is the entire remaining schedule. Even the Lions are suspect as they just laid a turd too. Broncos might finish well. I don't know about a Pop Warner. That's a tough freaking team, dude. I'm not taking anything away from the Broncos on that win. I'm not minimizing that in any way, shape, or form. My friend, you're talking about a defense going into this game, Zach, that was ranked number one in all but like one of the major statistical categories. And that one category that initially comes to mind off the top of my head, we didn't get to do a head-to-head comparison because we didn't podcast Thursday, Thanksgiving, was scoring. This was a very good defense. And I mean, Dorian DTR, for what it's worth, he may be a rookie, but that dude was hanging tough.
Yeah.
He was threatening the Broncos. It wasn't always pretty, but that's the way the Broncos are now. Quarterbacks they aren't always pretty against the Broncos nowadays.
Listen, far be it from us or far be it for the Broncos to take any team for granted. I don't think they're that good where we can assume that other teams are inferior. It's still the NFL, and these teams are going to get paid to beat Denver, and they're going to give Denver their best shot. Of the remaining schedule, I could see New England being, because they're in full tank mode, I can see them being the gimme game, but nothing left on the docket. Even the Chargers, the Raiders, those are divisional games. Detroit is a very tough team. Houston's tough. It's going to be a dogfight, but the Broncos now have the momentum and have the, I'll use your word, Chad, the identity going forward to really make a push for this thing.
What did Sean Payton, he said it multiple times, confidence comes from demonstrated ability. And the Broncos demonstrated some ability by defeating the Chiefs. And we wondered, man, a lesser team led by a lesser coach would allow that game and that triumph to be their Super Bowl. And it would be all downhill from there, guys resting on really weak laurels. But that's not how it happened. They saw that as a demonstrated ability. Hey, we can hang with the cream of the crop. And it's just grown by leaps and bounds, Zach, week in, week out. And just seeing that swagger the whole team was playing with in the fourth quarter when the floodgates opened and the momentum just went like this, man, is a beautiful thing to see, especially after how dark things have been in Denver for the better part of the last decade. The Duchess, love you. Again, top row. She says, crazy. We were talking about trading Cortland a couple of months ago. How things change. Is the NFL ever going to take responsibility for the atrocious referees? No. That's a song, Zach, as old as time. People complaining about refs. It is what it is. You just have to be impervious to it as best you can.
Yeah, I mean, the sad reality is that controversy sells, and when the NFL is selling something, it means this. That's what the NFL is run on, money. And to the people who say they're not going to ever watch a game because of the referees, they'll always come back. It's the most popular sport in the country. I don't know about the world, but definitely the country. And no matter how bad the referees are, we're still going to be sick freaking animals and watch every single minute of every single Broncos game, despite how bad the Zebras are.
No doubt. Love you, Michaela. And yeah, it is curious. We think about Cortland Sutton. We're taking him for granted, but I don't think we should be totally crucified for that. I mean, after he tore his ACL in 2020, Zach, he did a whole lot of nothing. Now, he didn't have a lot of help at quarterback. It had a lot of instability there, was working back from an ACL, and he didn't have much coaching virtuosity to kind of help him on his way.
Great movie.
So he had to kind of work things out himself, but I give him his props, man. And I'm glad the Broncos stood pat. We know that they had offers and they said, nah, he's worth more to us on the team and what we have planned and envisioned than what we could get for him. David Cromwell, what's going on, big dog? So good to see you, man. We go back a long, long ways with David. He's a podcaster in his own right. Great to see you. He says the winning streak speaks volumes about Sean Payton. He's getting the utmost out of a middling roster. However, I think Denver comes back to earth these next 3 weeks against elite quarterbacks. Do you? Um, no, I don't. I don't. I think they might not win all 3 games, but there's just something new cooking. I mean, let's define these elite
You're
quarterbacks.
right.
CJ Stroud,
Yeah. That was my
Justin Herbert, and Jared Goff, all very good. I mean, there's been people who have said Justin Herbert is elite, and I think he's performed. I think it's fair to call Justin Herbert elite. CJ Stroud, I have a hard time calling any rookie quarterback elite, but he's definitely been playing lately on an elite level. So I don't want to take that away from you. It might seem like I'm parsing words here, David, but I'm not that worried about it. I think this is a team that collectively, as Zach talked about earlier, with how balanced they are, the complementary kind of model that they have, I think they can hang with any of these quarterbacks.
Jared Goff, I see a comment that I fully agree with, has never been elite. He's always been serviceable or very good, depending on the coaching. But I think he has like 6 turnovers in his last 2 games. That's not elite. CJ Stroud, he's a tremendous rookie. He's going to be good for a very long time, but he's still a rookie. And like I said earlier, if you watch his games, he's still making rookie mistakes. He's not elite. Justin Herbert, how many playoff games does he have under his belt? How many playoff wins does he have under his belt? Again, a very good quarterback. I wouldn't say elite. To me, Chad, elite is reserved for like the top 3 to 5 at most. And I wouldn't put any of those quarterbacks in the top 3 to 5.
We got Chaos Josh in the house, the Oi Boy 90. So good to see you, my brother. He says 6-5, Priests. So good to see our boys wheeling and dealing some solid ball this time of the season. Just like my other football team across the pond. He's talking about Newcastle, who just beat Chelsea 4-1, I think it was, yesterday. So hashtag Toon Army. Good for you, big dog. He's a gremlin, but we're talking Broncos. And Josh, I'm glad there was at least one person in this audience tonight that got my DI reference earlier. Thank you, buddy. Darren, that's a newer name. Welcome, big dog. Thank you very much. Don't forget to connect with us on X, Twitter, whatever you want to call it. Keep the conversation going. Thank you, buddy.
Bills, thank you for the super. Bills just lost, Chad, to Philadelphia in overtime. So they're 6-6 now. The Broncos are 6-5. Boys and girls, things are falling into place for your Denver Broncos.
Phil in Tucson, one of our great, most consistent supporters and just a great member of this community that's there night in, night out to help us keep the conversation going. Appreciate you. He says, good evening. Wow. NFL record score, 5 in a row, leading the league, getting to safety, getting some bad calls, all around a standout effort. What more can a fan ask for? Hashtag Buckham, MHH for life, go Broncos. Yes, indeed. Buckham with a B. Riptide. Thanks again, buddy. He says Eagles about to win. Let's go. Is it in the books? Is it official? So it's official. It's final. Eagles, that's a team, I wouldn't want to have to draw. But fortunately, Zach, they're not on the schedule this year. FA, another top roper. Thank you, dog. Says, when was the last time we were number 1 on special teams? I mean, I can't even remember. I'm trying to think back to those Joe DiCamillo's teams. And I mean, they were solid, but number 1 in the key metrics, I don't think so. Sean Payton said the fastest way to turn a team around is turning around special teams. Maybe he knows a thing or two, LOL. And Will Lutz is having a year, 92% accuracy. Yeah, after a little bit of a shaky start, right, from Will Lutz, he's been reliable. More reliable than Brandon McManus, in my opinion, for what it's worth. And this isn't me trying to, stand on a Super Bowl 50 champions Bronco grave, so to speak. But Zach, when the chips were down, when he would often miss those kicks, the last few years, of his tenure, Brandon McManus, and he's always the mouthy, uppity, whatever you want to call it, kicker. And maybe that had to do with the fact that he was his team's NFLPA rep. So he felt kind of his oats, so to speak. But I feel much more confident when the Broncos have to trot Will Lutz out onto the field for a field goal. I'm not as flip a coin as I was toward the end there with Brandon McManus.
It's funny. I flipped on the Jaguars game today, and I saw McManus miss a 50-plus yard attempt, just like hooked it completely wide right. I'm pretty happy with Will Lutz. I understand what happened in week 1, but everyone gets the yips. Everyone makes mistakes, and he settled down and has become a real rock for this team. But Chad, I had a good feeling, as did you, when they hired Sean Payton did, Mike Westhoff as the advisor, assistant coach, whatever title he has. I mean, you're talking about one of, if not the greatest special teams coach in NFL history. And it's no surprise they've turned around this quickly.
No doubt. No doubt about it. Troy, the fawn donkey in the house. Good to see you, bro. Love, just love. Wow, says Troy. Thank you, buddy. Daniel Garcia jumping in to say, I saw Simmons say, come on, bro. Shaking his head after the Baron Browning flag, which, again, it sucked. We didn't want to see it, but it ended up being, if he gets fined, that hit was worth the 10 grand or 11 grand or whatever it'll cost him. Because it opened the floodgates, knocked that quarterback out. And it was clean. It wasn't ill-intended. This wasn't a Kareem. Scott gave us a little clinic last week. Was it last week? Yeah, last week on Kareem Jackson with the lowered helmet and all that. And, when your helmet makes first contact from right here, you're probably leading with your helmet a little too much. But that wasn't what this was. And so Baron Browning, tip your cap, dude. He's been another one of the big reasons why and how things have changed defensively for the Broncos. Garth, appreciate you, bro. He says, hey, Baron Browning with that hit. I know he was flagged and nobody wants to see injuries, but that hit was above board. Totally agreed. In this case, 100% agreed.
If he's fined, he's going to be fined for playing football. And I feel like if DTR wasn't injured on that play, it wouldn't even been a flag. It's just because if it looks violent now, not even if it is violent, if it looks violent, clean or not, it's going to be flagged. And doubly so in the Broncos case lately. If Baron Browning is penalized with a fine, the Broncos should pick that up for him. That is ridiculous.
From Scott, talking about how Kareem tackling like a dude with no arms. That's trouble, right? Imagine pretend you're a pro football player, Zach, and the only way you don't have any arms. And so the only way you can bring someone to the ground is by kind of just launching yourself at them, helter skelter, hell or high water. Here I come. I'm a missile. That's Kareem. How often do you see this? Almost never. So it's a fair point. Swarley, brother, newer name. Welcome, big dog. Oh, first time live listener. I'm from Ohio, and I can't wait to go to work tomorrow. Nice. Let's go. Ooh, man, that's like against Ohioan religion. The fact that a Broncos fan living amongst them, the team that decimated their Bernie Kosar dreams twice in the 80s. So good luck with that, big dog. We're here to back you. Mike, is it Mike? Yeah, I don't know how you got that font on YouTube, but good for you, big dog. And welcome. He says, let's go. MHH for life. Appreciate you, brother.
Thank you, Mike.
Alexander Miles jumping in. Thank you, buddy. He says, while the playoffs are the focus, if we beat the Texans on the road, I think Payton is an unprecedented coach of the year. He's on that path, dude. If the Broncos keep up this momentum, basically, Zach, if the Broncos make the playoffs, I mean, there's some other options. Scott brings up Shane Steichen in Indy. There's some other options there. I'm going to take a look real quick. What is on the AFC South? So the Colts are 6-5 as well. So he's got an argument. D'Amico's definitely also in the conversation, but the storyline, Zach, of how the Broncos like if the season ended today, the story and the how of the Broncos going from 1-5 to 6-5. I mean, that's where we start talking about the word he used, unprecedented.
Yeah, I think if the season ended today, you would have to mark it down if you had to choose as a success. And the Broncos obviously still have, 6 games remaining on their schedule. So I don't know how it's going to shake out for coach of the year or whatever platitudes are going to be, dealt out. Nick Sirianni is another one from Philadelphia, could be coach of the year. I mean, they're pretty unstoppable. They just beat Buffalo in overtime. But if they sneak into the postseason, the Broncos do. If they win 10 games, Sean Payton will have as good of a case as any other coach in the league.
James Edwards jumping in. Good to see you tonight, James. Thank you, bro. He says, refs are full of bull shark feces. That's kind of random. I mean, I thought you were just going to go like bull and shark in place of the, the expletive, but then feces, like you're taking it a whole extra step, and I got to respect it. It says MHH for life, Caribbean zone. Good for you. Live it up, big dog. Colby C. Collier, the triple C in the house, saying, go Broncos. I think 10 wins is within reach. Believe. Yeah. I mean, you look at the schedule, Zach, it's there. Michaela jumping in again. Thank you so
Michaela.
much, Michaela. She says, predictions. Will the Broncos make the playoffs? I love you all. MHH Fox. Zach, I mean, Michaela, MHH Fox. I mean, we've spent time with her. Absolutely. She's trying to say probably for life, but I'm predicting, yes, Broncos make the playoffs. There's enough sample size there now, Zach, against high quality opposition where you can't call it a fluke, right? You can't say, borrowed time. Even today, Nick wrote up an article, Nick Kendall, very good article, kind of giving voice to something everyone is wondering and thinking going into this particular game, which is this defensive production in the takeaway department sustainable? The statistics, the history says unlikely that it's sustainable. Let's just call it maybe not unsustainable, but improbable for that to continue. And yet it did. So again, I'm not saying that this is no longer anything that can even remotely be dismissed as a fluke or as, hey, those chickens going to come home to roost any given moment. And I do rebut, I can't remember who said this earlier, apologies, but a middling roster. I don't think this is a middling roster. I think we thought it was. We thought it was a big reason for the issues early this season, but it just turns out, Zach, that these are young players. It's a young roster that needed some competent coaching hands to mold it and bring them up to a level that approaches what their potential is. I mean, they have a good edge rushing crew. The defensive line, that's where I might meet you there and say, okay, middling, but two linebackers that still continue somehow, some way, in Josie Jewell and Alex Singleton to outkick their coverage. I mean, young cornerbacks chipping in and showing up that have no business showing out the way they have up to this point. Talking about you, Jaquan McMillan. The safeties, I mean, PJ Locke emerging in the face of a lot of shuffling due to the injury bug and suspensions and whatnot. That's just the defense. I don't think this is a middling roster, and that should excite Broncos fans because now they have draft picks again. They can go out there and continue adding to the cupboard.
I think Michaela meant to say MHH rocks, and if so, Michaela, you definitely rock as always. And yeah, I mean, I'm going to say it again. I know I've been repeating this ad nauseum, waiting for the other shoe to drop. I've been one of the biggest Broncos skeptics. I can only speak for myself. Since that 1-5 start, since week 3, I was even almost on the tank train. But if you look at the body of work, it's easy to discount if one game, if they just beat the Packers, if they just beat Kansas City, if they just beat Buffalo, if they just beat Minnesota, if they just beat Cleveland, you can make a case that it's a fluke, it's a flash in the pan, they'll come back down to earth, regression to the mean, yada, yada. But they've beaten all of those teams in a row. You're talking about the hottest teams in the NFL, the most complete teams in the NFL, and the Broncos have snuffed them out. They haven't gotten lucky. They haven't really eked by. They've put together solid, I would say, elite tape over the last month, and that's a credit to every single player and every single coach on that roster.
I don't blame the people who, like, I think you put it really, really nicely, who have kind of just been rocking back and forth, waiting for that other shoe to drop. Yeah. Trauma does that. And this is a fan base that has been traumatized over the last, specifically the preceding 6 seasons, because 9-7 didn't make the playoffs in 2016, but 9-7, you still had a Super Bowl defense. That was a good football team that had youth at quarterback, and some instability there relative to the injury bug. So fans have been traumatized, and it takes, it's different for everybody, but kind of climbing out of that hole, it's a different journey for everybody. Dave from Georgia, my brother, rocking his Buckham t-shirt like a boss. Gotta love it. He says, Brady Quinn and his band of losers told me a Broncos win was impossible. Wonder what they're thinking now. Hashtag Buckham all. Indeed. Buckham all, bro. What was this, a Twitter exchange? I'm curious, but Dave, good for you, big dog. Pick the Broncos. You was right.
I think somewhere too, Adam Rank and Nick Wrong and Kyle Brandt also predict the Broncos to win 4 or 5 or 6 games this year, constantly crapping on them. So I'm going to stop talking though, because we have a major showing of generosity by DWI. Wow. Speechless.
Justin Simmons, real quick, is the best safety. Jumping in to say Justin Simmons is the best safety in football. Hey, he's up there, no doubt about it. Gotta love him. Gotta love him. Thank you for jumping in with the super chat. Ethan is saying, "Hey, MHH, let's get ready for Christmas, dude. Upgrade that microphone. Get new lights for Jensen. Maybe Zach needs a new green screen. That's what it does. But either way, guys, Ethan is going off the chain here. This is like, first of all, a YouTube max out super chat, and it's coming from across the pond. I don't know if you guys pay attention to these things, but $1 doesn't go quite as far in the UK as it does here. So, dude, thank you. I mean, it helps us tremendously. I hope you know that. It really does keep the lights on, allows all three of us to keep doing what we do, and being there for you guys. And as long as you keep showing up for us, we're going to keep showing up for you. I did feel a little bit guilty that we skipped Thursday. We don't often skip shows, even on holidays, but this time it just kind of worked out that way. But still, Ethan, love you, bro. He says, every win like this, I will come from the top rope. VJ haters, stop. He has adjusted to his players. Well said, Ethan. Again, I just want to tell you thank you. Cap is off to you. Much love and respect, big dog.
Still speechless. I mean, literally in the middle of my sentence on another comment, Ethan, your generosity stopped me in my tracks. I know it sounds cliche, but we appreciate it from the bottom of our hearts collectively. Me, Chad, Scott, everyone at MHH. It goes so far, and we can't tell you how appreciative we are. Thank you.
But yeah, I think at this point, when you talk about assistant coach of the year, there are a lot of good candidates for that this particular season, Zach. But the story, none of them have that story that VJ has, because it's not just, Zach, think about this, and Ethan, think about this. It's not just, yes, exactly. This is funny. Hold tight, Garth. But it's not just, Zach, that Vance Joseph overcame a historically bad start to lead a historic run relative to the takeaway and really be the tip of the spear for a resurgence of the Denver Broncos. But coming back and having the stones and the confidence to come back and do that in the city that just a few short years ago fired you as the head coach. You left humiliated and defeated utterly, basically. So the storylines for VJ and the redemption are there. And as great as some of the other coordinators out there have been this year, and there are some real legit candidates for this thing, none of them have that even anything remotely resembling that big of a human interest angle that VJ's does.
Yeah, even if he doesn't win assistant coach of the year, or he's not recognized for some individual award, I think VJ has done enough to return in 2024 as the Broncos DC. And for me to even say that, Chad, considering where they were a month ago, is insane. I did not think I'd get on here a month later and be, advocating for VJ's retention as the DC, but he has earned that, and he's elevated the players around him. I think he's gotten people to buy in, but also he's taken average talent like PJ Locke, for example. No offense to PJ Locke, but he's not athletically gifted like Caden Stearns. He's not athletically gifted like a Justin Simmons. And PJ, you wouldn't even know he's a hold the fort backup. He looks like a 10-year starter out there because the coaching has elevated him to that level. So my hat's off to VJ 100%.
It's funny, Garth, you bring this up. He says, wasn't Troutman Rambo's mentor in the film series? This is something Scott brought up earlier. Colonel Troutman, First Blood, of course, John Rambo's commanding officer. So yes, indeed. Maybe we just start calling Troutman Rambo. I don't know. I mean, maybe a few more catches like that before he earns such a nickname. But Garth goes on to say, imagine if the Broncos got Caleb Williams. They could be as bad as USC, but in the NFL. Yeah, it's funny how the tropes have kind of started to pull back and change a little relative to Caleb Williams. Just don't, bro. 16. Thank you.
It always felt gross to me, and thank you. We have a comment here, 199 super. Thank you. Caught me off guard today. Was expecting 12-9. Yeah, it was going to be a slugfest, a defensive battle, but that was the fifth game the Broncos have scored at least 24 points this season. For reference, Chad, they had 4 games of 24 points all of last season.
Indeed. Indeed. Lawrence Rivera, appreciate you, brother. Bonafide super chat superstar at MHH saying 5 wins, baby. Let's go. What up, YouTube fam? I'm not getting too happy, but if we surpass 9-8, I'll be happy. That would be a turnaround in my eyes. I mean, anything that results, frankly, in a playoff berth, when this season started, that would have been like, hey, living the dream. Like that's ideal considering where this team has been of late. And I still basically hold to that. I don't care what it looks like per se, but if Sean Payton leads his team to a playoff berth in year one, especially the way they started, I'm a happy camper. Michaela Israel jumping in. Much love and respect. Give our best to the little man. She says, just showing some love. Man, this team is fun to watch. I love seeing Russ playing well. MHH for life, Denver Broncos for life. I was getting a little, and Bugmeister jumping in too to say, Mr. Unlimited, let's go Broncos. Thank you, brother. We are getting a little long here, guys, so we got to go soon. Just FYI, any burning topics, get them in the chat, but we got to go here very soon. I was starting to get a little bit nervous, Zach, at some of the hits Russ took toward the end of the game.
Yeah.
One of those sacks, a scramble, I don't want to tempt father time and fate too much, with the whole Taysom Hill. But it was really cool to see Sean Payton pulling things out of the old playbook and out of the dresser drawer that Cleveland definitely, Jim Schwartz was not anticipating.
I think there was a naked bootleg toward the end of the game, and Russ got absolutely decked. So, yeah, I would not want him to take those unnecessary hits, but credit Sean Payton for utilizing Russ's legs. We got on here after the gut reaction last week, and I said, I'm surprised that Russ didn't really run that much, considering he's looked a lot lighter and a little faster this season. Well, in the red zone, those RPOs and the design runs for Russell Wilson really caught that Cleveland defense off guard. And for the most part, Sean Payton outcoached Jim Schwartz, the Browns defensive coordinator. And if you outcoached Jim Schwartz, you did a damn good job. That's a good Cleveland defense.
Flazify jumping in. We got a rapid fire, guys, because we got to dip on out of here to get to some written articles at the website. Flazify, again, thank you, my friend. Number 2 tonight, has Lloyd Cushenberry, the center, done enough so far this season to earn a second contract? I say if he keeps playing the way he is, I would say so. Yeah, I think he's another one of those guys where, Zach, I just can't call it a fluke anymore,
Right.
And especially the way this offensive line against this level of competition was blasting open holes. And again, Russ, look, it doesn't take much. It doesn't take long for pass pressure to materialize. But today, Zach, the Cleveland Browns had one singular sack on Russ. Now, not to say Lloyd is responsible for that, but still, I'm at a point now where it's like, yeah, dude, you know what? You went through the process of developing this kid. He finally started showing you that potential as a 3rd-round pick. Give him a contract. Maybe don't swing for the fences on it, but give him a contract. Jess, yes, indeed, brother. Thank you. Says, what a way to turn the season around. But how are you feeling about Cushenberry?
Well, we talked about coaching elevating the talent level, and Cushenberry, if there's one player that Broncos country agreed on that should have been, ousted, that was definitely Cushenberry, and they kept him around. We kind of scratched our heads as to why we felt they could have upgraded that spot, but that's what good coaching does. I have not even heard Cushenberry's name on game days because he's been invisible, which is a good thing for a center. So yes, absolutely. If his trajectory remains the same, I am offering a second contract. I don't think Cushenberry is one that would bleed the Broncos for more money. I think he takes sort of a team-friendly deal, and it's important if you keep Russell Wilson for 2024, which at this rate I think they have to, you're going to want that continuity between center and quarterback to remain the same. So yeah, I'm Team Cush for the future.
Patriot Tex, thank you, buddy. Says, starting to believe that we may get to 10 wins. Little worried about the Texans, but games aren't played on paper. Go Broncos, #playoffs 2023. Well said. John jumping in. What's up, big dogs? PJ Locke is key to this defense. He has to stay healthy. All around a solid game by our squad. This is getting exciting, guys. Much love. Yes, indeed. I mean, it's a different, even when Kareem's been available, when PJ Locke, when you compare how these defenses hold up, especially in against the pass and in critical situations where poise and just smarts come into play here. It's been a different animal with PJ Locke back there. The brainstorm, good to see you. If Russell Wilson has another year mastering this offense, MVP. So in other words, like if this is the stepping stone to 2024 blasting open offensive, prolific thing, MVP, we'll see, man. We'll see. I'm not sure Sean Payton is really, trying for that. I think this model, they're onto something. And there's something to be said for Zach. And John says, longtime listener, loves y'all show 10-6. Thank you.
Thank you, John.
There's something to be said for a team that wins the way the Broncos win. And what I mean by that is it's hard to beat a team that stays on the field, runs the ball down your throat, moves the chains on third down, scores in the red zone, stops the run, doesn't let you score touchdowns, and takes the ball away. Meanwhile, has the best special teams in the NFL. Mm-hmm. That's a model, not easy to sustain. But if anything, Sean Payton's going, yeah, we'll build on this as best we can. But this is very close to ideal in terms of winning. It might not be the fantasy scenario that fans that got used to for 4 years under Peyton Manning with all the passing production and touchdowns. But you don't need that to score, or you don't need that, I should say, to win.
Really, really well said. Yeah. And it's another thing for the Broncos, to their credit. They can play sloppy or ugly for 3 quarters, but they seem to turn it on when it matters most in the fourth quarter. And that's why I don't really care about a pretty win or a pretty loss or an ugly win, ugly loss. In the Peyton Manning years, the Broncos would win a game, let's say 42-0. In the 2023 iteration of the Broncos, they might win a game 21-20, but the end result is still the same. A win is a win is a win is a win. Let's enjoy them.
Amen to that, Mike. Thank you, big dog. Love the Ronk. Always there, always contributing, and always positive, supportive, optimistic. We love it. We love you, big dog. But we're out of time, guys. We got to go, but we always make time for the Duchess, who says, I bought a Russell Wilson jersey. All right. Well, hey, maybe that was maybe that's a reason why things are turning around. That Broncos country has been waiting for Michaela to buy that jersey so Russ could get out there and ball.
And also, I'm just saying, 5-0 since the meet and greet, Chad. That's where this winning streak, I think, was born. So
the true genesis, right? The true provenance of where this thing started. Guys, love you. Thank you. Don't leave quite yet. We have a couple messages first.
That was another tremendous installment of the Gut Reaction podcast covering the Broncos' Week 12 victory over the Cleveland Browns. If you're not doing so, please follow us on X/Twitter at the MHH Pod. You can also follow the main account at Mile High Huddle. You can follow Chad at Chad and Jensen, myself at Kelberman NFL, and Scott, our producer, at Scout Kennedy. If you guys want some MHH merch like we're always rocking each and every single show, check out mhhmerch.com and get yo swag on. If you haven't, also drop us a like at facebook.com/Mile High Huddle Pod. You can find us on Instagram at mile_high_huddle. And on Apple Podcasts, make sure you're leaving your football priest a 5-star review for a chance to win some of that merch each and every single month. But if anything, guys and gals, ladies and gentlemen, please subscribe, like, and share this video and every video you see on the MHH channel. It really helps us grow and reach more Broncos fans just like you.
Amen to that. A special shout out real quick. Jeremy Shawn in the house, keeping the conversation going. We got Todd Ostendorf, Kurt on Facebook, few of the names that maybe not super chats, but they're every single night without fail. Money Moore, I see you tonight. Good to see Doug. Good to see Rodriguez, Jim Miller, Pearl on Facebook. Good to see you. A Mile High salute and shout out to these great super chat superstars and supporters. tonight, starting with Tom El Greco, Ted, Chris Hernandez, Flazify, Robert Audison, that is, Mike Edel, Michael Ronquillo, Zeus, Alexander Miles, Riptide, Patriot Tex, let's see, Brandon Williams, Michael Davis, Taylor Christensen, Wade Kimball, David McElrath, Kenan HB, George Fox, David Cromelo, Oi Boy Josh, Darren, Phil McLaughlin, Troy, Daniel Garcia, Swarley, Michaela Parker, the Duchess, Mike M, Garth, Naj, the Triple C, Colby, let's see, James Edwards, FA, Dave from Georgia, Justin Simmons is the best safety in the NFL, Michaela, Israel, let's see, Lawrence Rivera, the Boogmeister, just don't, bro. 16, DWI guys. Ethan, let's see, John, Jess, the Brainstorm, much love and respect. We'll see you tomorrow night, guys, for the Aftermath episode. But don't forget, fresh episode of Broncos for breakfast on the Bright.
Have a great rest of your Sunday. We'll see you tomorrow. Take care. And as always, Broncos country, go Broncos.